All of season long, we've heard the same thing about the Raiders, that they need a true number one receiver, a big-bodied X who can win on those back shoulder balls from Fernando Mendoza. We've seen plenty of those from him in his college days. And I'll be honest, I was one of those people who thought they needed that X receiver, but after digging deeper into this offense and really looking at what Klint Kubiak wants to do within this scheme, I'm starting to think that they may not need one, at least not right now, and I'll explain later. Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome into a live edition of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast brought to you by PrizePicks. Now, tonight, we're putting this whole wide receiver debate to the test, okay? We're going to ask whether or not this group makes more sense than I think a lot of people really want to admit. I'll explain why they didn't force it in the draft, why Kubiak's system changes this conversation, and what guys like Trey Tucker, Jalen Nailor, Bech, Dant'e Thornton Jr., and Malik Benson actually bring to the table and what they'll likely be asked to do in this offense. And then we'll dive into whether this offense even requires that traditional X receiver that everyone's talking about. But before we get there, you know how we do it. We got to hit our question of the day, and I want you to tell me if you think the Raiders need another wide receiver, and if so, why? And if you're feeling up to it, tell me who you want them to grab as well. Sound off in the comments and let the debate begin, guys. I can't wait for this one. I'm excited for it. Oh, yeah. And if you're new here, make sure you smash those like and subscribe buttons. We just passed 10,000 subscribers on the channel over the weekend. That is a huge milestone for us here at Silver and Black Sports Network. And I can't thank you guys in Raider Nation enough for helping us get there. Seriously, shout out to you guys for that one. I appreciate it so much. So, jump on board with the rest of Raider Nation if you haven't already subscribed and help us reach 20,000 even faster. And in the meantime, let's get this bad boy rolling and start diving into this whole talk about the Raiders wide receiver core, all right? Guys, so we are off and running. I see a lot of you folks here in the chat. We'll be going back and forth with all of you as the show really goes on. But at first, I just want to kind of dive into the spiel a little bit, okay, about the Raiders and kind of where things sit for them in this wide receiver core. And I think we have to begin this whole conversation by talking about the guys that they actually have in that wide receiver core, okay? They've got Trey Tucker, Jalen Nailor, Bech, Dant'e Thornton Jr., Malik Benson, and Derek Young, who they actually signed from Seattle. He'll likely factor in as more of a special teams guy. And then, yes, there's some undrafted rookie free agents, which we'll get into, and some other guys in the mix too. We can't forget about all of them. But honestly, that's kind of seeming like where things are going to slot in with the way things are working out for the Raiders right now. But also, too, we want to make sure we define about this offense and what Klint Kubiak and all these guys actually want to be doing from a standpoint when they're calling plays and all that stuff, okay? First off, the reason why they've got all these guys that are movers is the fact that Klint Kubiak uses motion, or at least did last season up in Seattle, on 62.6% of his plays up there. So this is a guy that wants interchangeable pieces. That's what he's gotten and built up in this wide receiver core. And yes, they're going to take deep shots, and this is where the big question begins about those prototypical X type of receivers, and it was a guy that I was pushing for a lot before the draft as well. But after talking to our buddy Dalton Wasserman, formerly of Pro Football Focus and now with a Preferred Walk-On podcast, he convinced me that this offense doesn't actually need that true X boundary type of receiver, that is going to go and win those jump ball situations, because when they're taking shots, even though they did it last year in Seattle at an 11% rate, it's not like they're doing it on the boundaries on those fade balls and things like that. Yes, they'll mix more of those in with Fernando Mendoza. I believe you guys in that regard, obviously. But they're doing a lot of those shots over the middle, the intermediate to deep area of the field in the middle there, rather than taking those shots on the edges, on the boundaries and stuff. It's a lot of those overs, those posts, things like that. So you don't necessarily need that true X to do it. Again, it always helps to have that bigger bodied guy, but that's not necessarily necessary in this offense, okay? And one of the reasons why I don't think they're even going to add any, or I guess I should have said this at the top of the show. Yeah, I'm leaning towards them not adding anybody. I really don't think they're going to. I could totally be wrong, but I don't think they're needing to add anybody to this group for a couple reasons here, okay? First of all, the Raiders got to figure out what they have in this receiving core. Again, let's go back through these guys. Trey Tucker, a guy who I and the Raiders very much so seem to like, but again, has to prove he can do it at a consistent pace. His career high is 57 catches for 696 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was last season. You'd need to see him be able to put up a little bit more than that if you can count on this guy as being one of your top receivers. Then they bring in Jalen Nailor, another guy, widely unproven. Yes, he did produce when he was in Minnesota when he got his opportunities, but we haven't seen him do it at a high rate. His career high is 29 catches for 444 yards and 4 touchdowns. Again, this is a guy that we think can do it all, but haven't seen him step into a bigger role. Needs to prove it. There's a trend here with these guys. Also, Bech and Dant'e Thornton Jr., who they selected in the draft last season as well. They don't know what they actually have in those guys because Pete Carroll and company didn't actually play him till much later in the season. So that's one of those deals where, like, you have to see what you have in Bech now to figure out if he can be your Cooper Kupp type of guy. And I'll dig deeper into what each of these roles will be for these guys as we kind of roll on. But I just want to hit on the fact that there's a lot of unproven guys in this system, or at least on this roster, that are young, that you need to see what you have in them. And then also in Dant'e Thornton Jr. too, we got to see if he can be more than just that, take the lid off of it, deep threat type of guy. Can he expand that route tree? Last season, the inconsistency was all over the place. He looked like he was going to be a guy early on in training camp and early on in the season. They gave him the opportunities, and then he kind of faded away into obscurity. What has he got? Is he a guy you can count on long term? And then there's also Malik Benson, who they brought into the fold, another guy that's a speedy dude who brings a lot to the table. I'm real curious to see how they bring him into the fold. Dan Lanning from Oregon had a lot to say about this kid and said that's speed that will transition into the NFL. And then again, Derek Young, we don't want to dive too much into him. That's no knock on him, but he looks like more of a special teams guy. I'd imagine he probably makes the roster, but again, you start playing that numbers game and you're like, okay, how many receivers are they even going to keep? Because we know that Klint Kubiak loves to also run his 12 personnel, and that's where I did see somebody in here. It's, Oaktown OG69 saying Bowers is our de facto wide receiver 1 at the end of the day. And yes, I agree with you 100% on that, and that's kind of the whole structure of this show today. And actually, for our Thursday show, we're going to be talking about Brock Bowers and the role that he will have in this offense. So I don't want to hit on it too much with Brock because, again, we're going to hit a deep dive on that with Max Toscano for our Thursday show. I think you guys are really going to love that. We're going to explain exactly how Kubiak can use him and Michael Mayer. Max is an awesome dude in the tight end space. He comes recommended to us from Dalton Wasserman, who you guys have seen on this show. He's going to be able to dive into the deep ends of this thing in terms of the tight ends and how they'll be used in this scheme. So I can't wait for that. But yes, I agree with you that Brock is the guy that's going to be your number 1 guy. He'll slot into that JSN type of role in terms of funneling all of those targets to him. I think JSN, I've got it here in my notes somewhere. Yeah, JSN had 163 targets all the way leading up to the Super Bowl, 1,793 yards. He's the primary chain mover. Brock will turn into that guy. So we do have to keep that, in the back of our minds as we're diving into this whole discussion here. But again, they're going to be in 12 personnel a ton. That only leaves you with 2 other wide receivers. So what are you going to do? Carry a ton of receivers, bring somebody in and take away a lot of the snaps from these younger guys that you need to learn and figure out what you have in them? And again, Kubiak favors, with all those, motions and things like that, favors guys that are versatile, inside, outside type of players. Essentially, every receiver you end up with in this Kubiak offense as a whole, even last year up in Seattle, is basically a slot receiver because they run those condensed sets. You know what I mean? So it basically turns everyone into a slot receiver. And when you look at this, you have guys in Trey Tucker, Jalen Nailor, Bech. Yes, Dant'e Thornton is primarily an outside guy, but Malik Benson, more of a slot guy. So you have a ton of slot guys, which fits exactly what Kubiak wants to do. But again, they have the versatility to play inside and outside as well. But to go back to the whole 12 personnel conversation here, okay? Up in Seattle, Klint Kubiak used 12 personnel on 29.8% of their plays. and had the second best EPA when they were in 12 personnel. Essentially, that just means how well they fared, versus what they were expected to fare. So they were really, really good when they were in those 12 personnel sets. As for the Raiders, just in terms of reference here, when they were in 12 personnel, it was 33.9% of the time, which was the fourth most in the league. Obviously, we know the offense was a mess last year, but they were 30th in EPA per play, okay? So obviously a vast difference there. Kubiak knows what he's doing. And the reason I bring up those two numbers is to show you the fact that, okay, look, Kubiak ran 12 personnel at a very, very high clip, okay? That was, I believe, the 8th or 12th most. I thought I had it in my notes, but I don't have it in here. But again, for the Raiders, running 12 personnel at the 4th most time in the league, there's more meat on the bone for that 12 personnel. Kubiak's going to be running it even more here with the Raiders, and he's got two guys in Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer that he can slot out wide. So there's going to be a lot that gets, brought into the mix with all of that in terms of the tight ends and how they factor into things. And so that's another reason why, you can't put so much stock into the receiving core. And then the other thing I want to add in here too, before I start diving into the chat and really interacting with you guys, is also the fact, too, of the Raiders have made it very clear and apparent that they're not in win-now mode. Yes, we like the moves that they've made in the offseason in terms of free agency and the draft and all those things. And I know you guys are really excited about the direction they're heading in. I like the direction that they're heading in. But again, they're building a foundation this season for the years moving forward. This is that foundational year. So again, why are you going to bring in a vet to come in and take those snaps away from the young guys when you need to figure out if those young guys can be there for you in 2027 and beyond to be a part of that foundation? So that's why I believe a number one wide receiver very likely comes next year in the draft, free agency, you name it, however they decide to attack it. That's when I think it comes. The timing now just doesn't make sense. Again, figure out what you have, not only in the receiving core, but from a team as a whole. Figure out what you got in the offensive line. Figure out where those holes actually are. You know what I mean? That's one of the things that really sticks out to me of how the Raiders do need to kind of approach this whole thing moving forward for them, okay? And now, guys, I want to dive into the chat here, but before we do it, we do got to pay some bills here, and we got to get a message from our buddies there over at PrizePicks, all right? Hey guys, we'll get back to the show in just a sec, but real quick, I wanted to talk to you about our presenting sponsor, our homies over at PrizePicks, all right? They're America's #1 sports picks app, and they're running a promo for new users right now. So go download the app and use the code HMA to play $5 and get $50 in lineups. For more info, you can check out the link in the description of today's video. I got on the mix with some NFL futures picks, and we're a Raiders brand through and through, so I kept most of my picks Raiders related, okay? I jumped on Ashton Genty's rushing yards total for next season. It's set at 974.5 rushing yards. Last year, he put up 975 rushing yards behind that horrendous offensive line. I don't see how he doesn't top the 1,000-yard mark with Kubiak and Rick Dennison in the fold, so that's why I went that route. Then I went over 6.5 on Brock Bowers' receiving touchdowns next season. His rookie season, when he went off for nearly 1,200 total receiving yards, he had 5 touchdowns, okay? Last year, when he only played in 12 games, he was hurt a lot, he had 7 receiving touchdowns. You guys saw the way Kubiak schemed things up for all of his guys up there in Seattle. I think 6.5 is honestly a pretty good number, but I'm saying he hits the over on that one. He's the Raiders' top receiving weapon, and Klint loves him some 12 personnel as well. I also took the over on Max's sacks. Now, this one was one of the few that was kind of tough for me in this whole lineup here. I wanted to lean under, but you know that he's pissed off after that botched Ravens trade. He's got a point to prove, and that is a scary thing for Max Crosby. And hey, if you like playing and building daily fantasy lineups, do it over on PrizePicks with our code HMA, but keep in mind you should only play if you can do so responsibly, and if you have the means to do it, make sure you're gambling responsibly, guys. In the meantime, though, let's dive back into today's show. All right, guys, now let's jump into the chat and start going back and forth with all you guys. I'm going to scroll up a bit and start interacting, and then kind of work my way down through the chat to really start going back and forth with all of you. Let's see. Tommy G 5585 says, I don't think they fill wide receiver 1 and take away the exact position all our wideouts are aiming for. I agree 100%. That's kind of what we laid out there, that, again, they need to let these guys go out there and show them what they can do, and then figure out, okay, where do these guys actually slot in for you going forward? Because, yes, they have in their head what each of these guys could be. Is it Trey Tucker that's going to be more of your JSN type of role, or is he going to be the Rashid Shaheed role? Is Jalen Nailor going to be your Jackson Smith and Jigba type of guy, or is he going to be more of that Rashid Shaheed role? Jack Bech, the role seems pretty clear. He's that physical, over-the-middle type of guy, seems to slot in as a Cooper Kupp, but again, we need to see that more from them. And then you have Dant'e Thornton Jr., who can also be a speed guy for you. They got Malik Benson, who could also be another speed guy for you and be that Rashid Shaheed take the top off type of guy, but also, too, he doesn't get enough credit for the work that he does over the middle. So again, don't bring in one of those other guys, and start taking away reps from these kids. Raider Larry 68 said, we need to find out what we have in the guys we already have who has taken the next step. Then we can weed out the weak. I see us maybe going after one next year. Yeah, agree 100% on you with that one, Raider Larry. That's a great take and kind of basically what I have been saying. Let's see. Oaktown OG69 said, next year's draft class has a lot of great options. I think we take this season to see what we fully have in Bech, Tucker. Oop, the chat just jumped on me here. Sorry, man. In Bech, Tucker. My bad. In Bech, Tucker, and company, and then make wide receiver a priority next year. Let's see. A lot of folks saying they agree with me. LV Rocker Raider said, I think Trey Tucker has a 1,200-yard year. Wow, that would be a big season for Trey Tucker. Again, the most yards he's ever had is 696 yards. I like Trey, and I think he did some really good things last year in training camp and started to move in the right direction. And again, in a bad situation, to still come down with 57 catches and nearly 700 receiving yards, a career year for him. I was impressed with him, but that's a big one. But hey, look, Klint Kubiak did it with him up in Seattle in terms of JSN. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Trey is a JSN guy, but he could definitely fit into the mix here. Let's see. Ooh, Oaktown OG 69. Okay, I'm glad you brought this one up. Before we dive into your comment here, I do want to give a shout out to TNVG 238. He said, hi, Jesse, in the chat. TN, thank you for jumping in, man. I see you in all the videos before. We appreciate you. But Oaktown69 says, I think Jennings is easily the best wide receiver free agent. However, he has played mostly in the slot, which is where I think Bech will be at his best. So, look, yeah, Jennings is like the easy fit just because of the tie-in to the Kubiak scheme, the Shanahan scheme from up there in San Francisco. And, look, this is a guy that really did excel in those contested catch areas. That's something he thrived on with the 49ers. But again, I got it right here. He's 28.8 years old, whatever the hell that means. I think he's going to be 29, if I remember right, coming up pretty soon here. So in bringing him in, you're bringing in an older player that, yes, has experience in the scheme and could help teach all of these guys, but you're taking things away from all of them. And that's the thing, taking snaps away from all these guys. And again, to Houston from LA, 5055 says, doesn't Jennings want money he doesn't deserve yet? That he doesn't deserve yet. Geez, hey, your words right there. But you're saying, doesn't he want the money? Yeah, he's probably going to want the money, and I guarantee that's why he's holding out. Right now, when you go and look at his previous average annual value, it was $5.9 million per year with the Niners. Per Sportico here, as we're looking at it, they're saying that his market value is 22.6 in terms of an average annual value. That's obviously insane. Not something that I think the Raiders should go out and do. They've got, I believe, $24.8 million left in cap space. Don't devote it to an older receiver when, again, you have to figure out what you have in the guys that are in the mix. Let's see. Raider TR 273 said, if we don't fix the O-line, it won't matter how good our receivers are. We were on the right track, but it's going to take time. Agree 100%, man. Like, look, at the end of the day, nothing changes on offense if this O-line isn't right. They're betting on the fact of their coaching being better, and obviously bringing in Tyler Linderbaum is massive for them. I do think this offensive line will take a step forward. When you go back and look at Seattle, that offensive line wasn't good. And yes, they invested in the offensive line, but when Kubiak and all those guys showed up there, it completely flipped things around for that offense. Yes, running the ball at the rate that they did, because even if when they weren't successful running the football, Kubiak stuck to it. So it took some of the heat off of the offensive line. They're not going to be just sitting there pass blocking as much, but they protected Sam Darnold very, very well. And again, Sam was very efficient and got the ball out quick as well. That's going to be something that Fernando and Kirk Cousins, whoever ends up starting and whoever's in there at whatever time, is going to have to do. But if the O-line ain't fixed, nothing's going to matter. That's for sure. Let's see. Raider TR 273 said, I can't wait to see Genty split out wide with Washington at running back. Dude, that's one thing that I've thought about as well. And I know today's conversation is specifically about the wide receivers, but we got to talk about Genty and what he can provide as a wide receiver. I've said it many times on the podcast. For those of you guys that don't know or don't remember, Ashton Jeanty led all running backs in college football in receiving yards as a junior. This is a guy that's got the receiving chops. We've seen what Christian McCaffrey can do in this offense when he was split out as a receiver. I'm not saying that Ashton is the same as a CMC type of guy just yet. He's got to go out and show that, but look and see what they're going to be doing with him. Look at how much Jackson Smith-Njigba was moved around. There was times when Klint Kubiak moved him into the backfield, and then from the backfield split him out wide, and he was running posts and different routes and things like that. We're going to see Ashton Jeanty very likely put in motion and expanding his route tree a bit more as well. I think he's got the receiving chops to be able to show out in this offense. So I'm really, really interested to see, how that kind of pans out for him and what his usage and his receiving totals looks like. Honestly, if I'm a fantasy football player, I'm going after Ashton Jeanty. One, because you got Klint Kubiak, who's proven that he's going to run the football, and I don't think it's really going to be much of by a committee. Ashton is going to be the lead back because he is a different type of dude. Washington's going to get his carries. I like what he brings to the table, but Ashton is going to be the number one guy. And then again, in terms of receiving and things like that, he is also going to, be involved a bunch in that wide receiver room. Let's see. Who else just said? Someone just said, oh yeah, Jerem209 said Nailor. The chat sheet keeps jumping on me here, so apologize on that one, guys, as I try to find your guys' stuff here. Yeah, Germ209 said Nailor is going to pleasantly surprise a ton of people this year. That guy flashed everything every time he was on the field last year. No, look, I agree. After talking with Matthew Collar, I was really, really impressed with what he had to say. Matthew Collar is from Purple Insider, one of the buddies of the program. He covers the Vikings, has been out there doing it for a long time. He's the guy we brought on to break down Jalen Nailor, and he basically said this kid is going to be able to feast on those over routes. He's a real shifty runner. They don't call him Speedy for nothing. Again, too, when you look in this receiving core, the whole thing that they want to be able to do is stress these safeties with speed, and there is so much speed in this wide receiver core. You got Trey Tucker, Dant'e Thornton Jr., Malik Benson, all those guys have run 4.4 and below, and then you also go and throw in another guy in Jalen Nailor, who, yes, ran a 4.5, but they call him Speedy. He plays faster, I think, than that 4.5. He's a guy I'm really excited to see how things transpire for him and kind of what he looks like. Let's see. Notable, not a bot, 9-C9Q said, Jeanty, 1,500 rushing yards, 500 receiving. Woo! That would be a hell of a year. I do think he tops the 1,000-yard rushing mark, as you guys heard in our plug there for PrizePicks. I think Genty's going to pass that. 500 receiving yards, that's doable as well, I think, in this offense. I don't know, 1,500 is going to be tough. Let's see him hit 1,000 first. But, God, with Klint Kubiak calling the shots, and if this offense is different, and if Linderbaum is the same dude that he's been, whew, man, it could be pretty crazy. Let's see what else we got up in here. Raider Greg said, everyone must understand this is not a one-year turnaround, 2 to 3 years minimum. Slow build is the only way to build for continued success. The right way, there is still holes. Yes, I agree with you 100% on that one, Raider Greg. You got to develop this thing. Develop. I think that's the key for the Raiders. Again, they've been saying all the right things, and all their moves point to development and building for the future and all that stuff. Look at free agency and the fact that they brought in all these guys that are 25 years old, that are still hungry, that have those elite type skill sets, but have to prove that they can do it either whether it's injury or just inconsistencies and stuff like that. They brought in young, hungry guys that are still, again, like I said, 25 years old on that second contract in the league and still feel like they have a lot of room, to grow and something to prove. And to me, that's like trying to reinsert and fix, I guess, the draft woes that you've had from years past by missing on a lot of the guys. So if they hit on a couple of these dudes that they signed in free agency, all of a sudden you're like, okay, now there's some more talent re-injected back into this roster. So yes, build. Even though we saw in the draft too, look at the way they addressed the DB room and brought in all those guys, So like if they hit on those dudes, all of a sudden they've completely flipped their DB room. So again, this is a building year for what's going to be here going on in the future. Let's see. Jax 3S. Yeah, my guy. All right. I was hoping you would come in and say this because I want to go back and forth with you on this one. All right. You said Debo or Ayuk or someone like that to show Bech how it's done. Tucker in his last years, several unproven guys at wide receiver 4 through 6. Yes, Bowers, but need to get rolling. And I love the Ayuk, first of all, there's no way in hell I'm touching that with a 10-foot pole. That whole drama and all that stuff, like I'm not messing with Ayuk, honestly. When you have guys like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan up there, acting and talking the way that they have been about Ayuk, talking about how like that's a situation they've never seen in their lives. And those are chill dudes for the most part, at least seems like it from the outside looking in. I want no part of a dude like that. And Kubiak, to me, obviously has ties to San Fran, knows those guys. I don't think he's going to want any part of that. The Raiders are bringing in good dudes that haven't had any character issues, any of that stuff, or haven't been like cancers to the team. So I just don't like that move. In terms of a pure player, dog, but I just wouldn't touch it for that part of it. Debo, also a very interesting one. Oh, man, I like Debo because of what he would provide to this offense, and good God, it'd be fun seeing him, Ashton Genty, and Brock essentially become your three-headed monster. And yes, show Jack Bech how it's done. But again, the best way to show Jack how to do it is to get him out there and do it. Like as I was looking up a lot of the numbers with him there and kind of really rolling through his usage and stuff, okay? Jack was, let me go back and try and find this again here, all right? Yeah, Jack was the 8th receiver taken in the draft last year, okay? He ran just 193 routes last season, which was 18th among rookie wide receivers, according to Pro Football Focus. That usage was just so bad. He only had 20 catches for 224 yards and no touchdowns. Like, you got to get him out there and see if he can actually be your Cooper Kupp guy rather than delaying it. Just, again, because I don't like the way that bringing in a guy like a Debo would take away things. I think you bring in Debo next season if he were available, if you're a Debo Samuel type player away from really competing, and maybe that gets you over the edge then this offense to really unlock the whole deal. I just don't think it makes a ton of sense, but I'm with you on those type of players if they can get one of them next year. I just don't think it's the right move, again, given where they're at, because I think you need snaps for that. And honestly, we could sit here and argue back and forth about it all the time, and I think my argument essentially is just like, don't take the snaps away from the young guys. We have to see them. Let me see. I do see a handful of you guys in here saying Jesse likes the Raiders. You can tell, LOL. Let's see. Cameron MGW said, join the dark side, Jesse. I love you guys. I got love for Raider Nation, but you guys know my heart lies with the Bucks, okay? Look, I've covered the Raiders since 2019. I was a media member. I've never been the guy that's the media member where, like, you can't root for the team that you cover or any of those things. Like, I've got no problem admitting that I always want the teams that I cover to do well, but I don't let that be a bias to me in my reporting. Like, I'll keep it real if they suck. You know what I mean? Like, so that's where I'll do that. He said, let's avoid the attitudes, please. Who said something about attitude in there? I don't know what happened. But, yeah, I personally just, like, I have no problem admitting that, yes, I want the Raiders to do well. Does that make me a fan? No. It makes my job way more fun, and I love it when you guys are happy. So don't get me wrong. You know, that's kind of how I wrap my head around the whole, like, fandom and things like that. I am still very much a Bucks fan, you know, and I have not hid that from any of you guys. I don't try and hide that. I don't try to front or any of that stuff. But, you know, I just want to make it clear that while I am not a fan, I am still rooting for you guys to do well, and I love the direction you guys are heading. Let's see. Who else said right up in here? There were some more things. Yeah, Warlock67 said no to the Niners receivers. Again, I agree with you on that. Let's see. Oh, Agent Red 8016 said, salute to the nation. Jesse, thanks for all the great work you do. Raider Nation for life. Seriously, hey, thank you. I appreciate you guys. Like I said at the top of the show, you guys just helped us get over 10,000 subscribers. We launched this brand in July from zero, from nothing. And the subscribers rolled in during training camp. You guys jumped on board real quick, but never in a million years did I imagined that we would top 10,000 subscribers this quick. Again, that's what, 9 months in that we top 10,000 subscribers. That's crazy. That's a crazy goal, but I want to hit 20,000 by the time the season kicks off. So if you guys are watching and you haven't already subscribed, make sure you hit those subscribe buttons, share the show with your friends, like, get everybody on board. Let's grow us to 20,000 because that helps take us to the next level and lets me invest more in the product and get some more people into the show and all that stuff and just make this bigger and better. Let's see. Not a bot 9 art. I do want to get back to the show real quick, but I will answer this real quick for you. Not a bot 9. You said, is that an Emmy back there? Yes, this is an Emmy. I'll pull the Emmy up and flex a little bit. That was from my time, as I go back to the mic, that was from my time at NBC here in Las Vegas. Admittedly, not from my coverage of the Raiders. It was actually from my coverage of the Golden Knights, you know, when they won the Stanley Cup. But that's why we got that, you know, so really proud of that one. Got to make sure I have that in the back there. Let's see. Okay, what else do we got in here? Agent Red 8016 said, this is by far the most young talent we've had in a while. Let them play. Yeah, look, again, there's interesting talent on this roster, and that's why I think it's intriguing. Like, I'll start jumping back into the chat here about some of the other guys, that should be talked about here, or potential guys that they could bring in, and my take on them. But like in particular with the young guys, one guy that I really want to see is Jack Bech. Like, again, let's not forget he was a second-round pick. Might have been a reach by some people's standards, but John Spytek really likes him, and this is a guy that can play both inside and outside, and again, brings that versatility. When he was in college, his last year in college, 71.8% of Jack Bech's snaps were on the boundary, okay? And this is a guy, too, that is also a converted tight end, so he's comfortable all over the place. And this is all on paper. Don't get me wrong. He has to show this, but this is all on paper, so I want to see him show it out on the field and everything like that. But again, you have to like what he could possibly be for you in terms of like being a power slot type of guy that, again, can go out there, win on those crossers, on the digs, the daggers, all the different things, the inside hitches, the over routes, like you name it. This is a guy that should be able to succeed in that Cooper Kupp type of role, and that's what I want to see out of this. I don't know why it took so long to get him out there because, again, this was a guy that, again, he only had 20 catches. I believe that was off of 24 targets or 26 targets. Like, he was efficient in the targets that he did get. So let's see more of him, being that. Let's see. Linda K6Z5Z said, were you a fan during the Gruden years at Tampa Bay? Go Raiders. Yes, I was actually a fan during the Gruden years. That was so I was really fired up to cover Gruden when the Raiders moved here in 2019. That was an awesome moment for me. So yeah, I was a Gruden guy for sure. It was a lot of fun, covering him. Mike. Oh, hang on, Mike. He just jumped on me. Mike Avelli 24 said, congrats on the 10K, Jesse. Would love to have you on the podcast this offseason. Mike, I'm not familiar with you, but I appreciate you on the shout out on that one. Send me a DM. Maybe we can coordinate or something like that. Let's see. Sir Chief a lot. Bech is him. This new coaching staff is going to unlock the inner tiger in him. Is that a tie-in back to his LSU days? Is that what we're getting at there with that one? I see what you did. But yeah, I think one of the guys that benefits most from this new staff coming in is a Jack Bech. And again, the opportunity will be in front of him. It's just a matter of if he goes out and seizes it. And I'm just so curious because also, too, back to Trey Tucker. And like I said, they're going to run a lot of, 12 personnel and all those different things. They're going to run a lot of those big sets. So there's only going to be, on average, probably 2 receivers out there a ton of the time. Can Jack Bech crack that? Like, I'm curious what his usage is going to be. That's going to be something I'm going to be following big time because Trey Tucker, to me, is a guy that is so versatile that can be that over-the-middle type of guy. Let's not forget, he has that wrestling background. He's a tough dude. He'll stick his nose in there and block. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Don't get me wrong. Jack brings more size to the table. He's a good blocker, which is very, very key in this whole deal. But I'm just curious what Trey Tucker's usage is going to be. And again, maybe he is more of that JSN type of guy that's inside, outside, all those different things. And they bring Jack in more in some of those interesting scenarios. Or do Jack and Trey end up swapping if Jack, pans out and ends up being a good guy? Are they on more of a rotation? And Jalen Nailor is their de facto number 1 wide receiver. Again, Brock's the number 1, but is Jalen Nailor then the 1A or something like that? There's just those 3 guys, Trey Tucker, Jalen Nailor, and Jack Bech. I am so interested to see what the snap count distribution and the usage looks like for them, where they're lined up, what routes they're running, all those different things. And just kind of, again, this time next year when we're talking about leading into 2027, what things are going to look like for them. Let's see. Raider 273 said, I think Vegas has us at 5.5 wins. Yeah, I believe that is the number, or I think the number has been 6 or 6.5. From a lot of the times when a bunch of the people I've been talking to, that's what they've been saying is that the win total is right around 6. It's somewhere in that range. I've said it a lot as well that I think 6 wins would be massive for you guys. Let me know down in the chat, if you guys won 6 games and lost competitively, is that a movement in the right direction for you? Would you be happy with that? If you got rid of a lot of the bad losses to KC, the blowout loss to the Colts, to the Commanders, those are just horrible losses. If they were close losses, but you win 6 games, can you be happy about the direction that you guys are heading? That, to me, is where things would really stand out. For Mike Avelli, hit me up on IG. That's probably the best spot I tend to check those a little bit more. I just try to unplug from social media a lot, though. So, but hit me up on IG, and I'll have a much better chance of seeing that. Now that we've gone back and forth here, I'll make sure I try and look out for it, all right? Thank you for going back and forth on that one, though. I appreciate it. Let's see. Raider Nation 510 said EJ Williams and Dant'e Thornton Jr. Okay, EJ Williams, I'm glad you brought up the undrafted rookie free agent there, because I want to dive into him a bit more. Oh, no, where's it at? I thought I had it in my notes over here about a couple of the guys. Let me see if I can pull that up here real fast, all right? But, yeah, there we go. Okay, I found him. So, yeah, with EJ Williams, he's a guy that's really intriguing, and one of the guys that I think is going to be super interesting because he obviously has the continuity with Fernando Mendoza. He had a big year. He had 36 passes caught for 438 yards and 6 touchdowns last year with Mendoza. Not some insane year. Obviously, he wasn't one of the number one guys for him. Wasn't even the second or third option. But, again, has the continuity with Fernando, but he satisfies that like X type of receiver role as a 6'3", 205-pounder. He's an interesting guy. Some folks have him listed at 6'4". On the Raiders website, they've got him at 6'3". So that's why I'm going with that. But and I'll address that comment there about the Oregon wide receiver from Benson in just a second here. Don't worry about that one, TRJU5RE. I'll hit on that in a sec here because I just want to talk UDFAs real fast. But in terms of EJ Williams and Chase Roberts as well, the kid from BYU, who's also 6'3", 209. Again, you see the Raiders come out of the draft without addressing, the X-boundary type of receiver type of guy because they don't take a ton of shots to the boundary, to the outside. They're not taking those shots on the fade balls and the back shoulder balls. But maybe you get a guy situationally that can come out there with the rest of your big bodies in Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer and then throw out a potential undrafted free agent in Chase Roberts or EJ Williams if one of them happens to crack into that top 5, top 6, however many receivers they end up keeping. But EJ Williams is an interesting cat. Brings some stuff to the table. The guy that I'm more interested in watching, and we didn't get to see him when we were out there on Saturday down at Raiders HQ for day 2 of Raiders rookie minicamp, was Chase Roberts because, again, I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know what the deal was because we're not able to talk to the coaching staff. At that time, they just had players available to us. So I don't know what the deal was, but he was just in his jersey and some shorts. He wasn't actually taking part in practice. I was really bummed about that because I wanted to get a look at this kid. Because, again, I'll read you from Chase Roberts if he's not already on your radar. If you haven't done your research on him, here's the lowdown on Chase, all right? This is his scouting report from NFL.com. Says he plays tough through contact and is an above-average combat catch winner. He's slow to gain positioning on 50-50 balls downfield, though. Roberts is an older prospect. I believe he's about 25, if I remember right, which could impact his draft slotting, which it did. He went undrafted. But he has the size and talent to make a roster. So he's a dude to keep an eye on when it does get rolling. He was a 3-year starter at BYU. Roberts was primarily an outside receiver. He was used outside on 68.1% of his snaps. Again, doesn't necessarily bring the inside-outside versatility, but maybe Kubiak can get that out of him. Some of the knocks on him, though, more of a body catcher than, and ideally hands out, and we've seen the receivers working on that and stuff, but catches too much with his body, and his drop rate last year spiked to 12.9%. He had 8 drops last season, which was actually more than he had in the previous 2 seasons combined. Kind of surprising there. Maybe it was an outlier. Who knows? I'm really curious to see, again, what the opportunities look like for him in training camp, and if he emerges as a potential bigger body guy that they can throw out there in some of the scenarios when they do want to take those deep shots or feast on some of those back shoulder balls that we saw Fernando do. All right, so back to your question about the Oregon wide receiver, that being Malik Benson, okay? TRJU5RE says, does the Oregon wide receiver pick mean that the staff isn't as high on Thornton, do you think? Seems to be a bit of a similar role. So when he was drafted, if you haven't seen the draft coverage from when they picked him, my initial thought on Malik Benson was, okay, is he just like a shorter version of Dant'e Thornton Jr.? And in talking with a handful of folks, they said, no, that's not the case, that it's not the same role. It's a similar role, but Dant'e Thornton Jr. has a bit more of the size and I think can be more of, hey, we're bringing you out here to take the top off of the defense. I think Malik Benson brings a bit more versatility to the table, okay? I think he's inside, outside versatile. I think they're going to move him around. And also, this is a kid, in watching him and also reading up on the scouting report on him, he brings more, strength in terms of catching over the middle, more of a willing guy to go over the middle and make those tough catches and stuff. I think he has a little bit of that, Cooper Kupp type of guy in him. Not exactly. He is a speedster. He is there to take the top off. Do not get me wrong. But I think this is a guy that, again, reading up on the scouting report and looking at a lot of the, different tape and things like that I did watch on him, seems like he's willing to go over the middle, that he's tougher than I think people are giving him credit for. So might be a guy that we don't necessarily want to put in a box and just say, hey, he is going to be your speedster. So I think there will be similar usage between him and Dant'e Thornton Jr., but I think Malik Benson very likely gives you a bit more. And again, we'll see if Dant'e Thornton Jr. can expand that route tree as well. Having said that, Malik Benson, I don't have the stats in front of me now, but I do remember he ran 9 routes on a pretty high clip when he was in college. That's definitely for sure. Major 0108 said Malik Benson tape last year was better than Thornton's. Look, Thornton comes from an offense that just hasn't developed receivers in the NFL very well. It hasn't translated. Their numbers are always crazy, and they always get looks, but they just don't translate to the NFL for the most part. But he, I think, is, to your point here, a more put-together speedster. Definitely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Seems to be just more versatile and bring more to the table, okay? Let's see. Notabot9C9Q said Benson will be our kick returner and punt returner. Yeah, he's going to be in the mix for that as well. Again, that speed that Dan Lanning talked about, and he said that translates to the league. You see him getting a shot as a punt returner. We'll be paying attention to that, in minicamp and all those different things towards the tail end of the month here, and really seeing how they're using him on special teams and stuff, because that's a kid that's got some juice for sure that could definitely get involved there. Oaktown OG 69 said our wide receiver room is quickly becoming fast. Tucker, Thornton, Benson, all can fly. Yeah, like I said, those are all 3 guys that ran under 4.4. And again, don't forget that Jalen Nailor is nicknamed Speedy, and when you watch the tape, he plays faster than that 4.5 40. We can't get too caught up on that. So there's a lot of real interesting speed elements in this wide receiver core. I think, initially I was like, man, this is essentially kind of like what Miami did, where they had a lot of those guys that were just movers with your Jalen Waddles, your Tariq Hill, all that different stuff. Guys that are moving all over the place. Like I said, motioning at over 60% of the time that Klint Kubiak did up in Seattle last year. In these speedier type of guys that they have in this receiver room, maybe they involve some of those jet motions, things like that, a little bit more, and just use that speed to give defenses hell. And again, they don't know where the deep shot's coming from. So I'm just really curious to see if we see something that's a little interesting or a little similar to like what we saw Mike McDaniel doing in Miami in terms of the way those guys were used, even where we see them kind of cheating down as almost like an H-back, like you saw Tyreek Hill in some of those roles too. So that's going to be fun to watch to see what they do with him. Let's see. Raider R7273 said, can't coach 4-3. Thornton will get a chance to develop. I agree 100%. That's one of those things, like having that kind of ability is not coachable. If you can go out there and show that speed on tape, like, good God, they are going to give you those opportunities. So he's going to have plenty of time to get it rolling. And Raider_Nation 510 said offense will be unpredictable. And look, that's the biggest reason why you guys should be so fired up about having Klint Kubiak in the fold. Go back and watch those playoff games. If you don't want to go back and watch the entire season, that's a lot. Go back and watch those playoff games. That's when your best is required. And what did Klint Kubiak do? He schemed the hell out of things for those guys, for JSN, for his tight ends, with Barner in particular, a lot of those routes. I believe it was the one against the Rams where he scored like the clinching touchdown on that corner route. They're just going to be able to move so many of those guys around and just create hell for defenses. At least on paper, that's what it looks like. Because again, you have all guys that seemingly can do kind of the same thing. So again, it's interchangeable that leads to that unpredictableness, from them. That's got to be your answer for the defense. And speed kills. Like, we all know that. That's something that you got to have. Let's see. Manuel Aguilar 373 said the wide receiver position will be addressed next year, but as your previous guest had said, we don't need a wide receiver 1 or an X in this offense. Agreed. That's kind of basically what this whole one was structured around, and that's why I actually wrote a newsletter article on it. So if you guys want a more like pared down version of it, head to silverandblacksportsnetwork.com, subscribe to our free newsletter, and read that thing. It kind of breaks everything down that I've gotten to here, excuse me, just more succinctly, but that's what kind of got me thinking about all of it. When Dalton told me that, I was like, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. And you go back and watch, and you're like, well, yeah, as sexy as it sounds to have these back shoulder boundary type of guys, that's not necessarily this offense. Now, Fernando was so good at it that we're likely going to see more of that sprinkled in when he does take over. But I think that's something where it's more of a luxury than a necessity in this offense in particular. So to your point there, Manuel, I think we're going to see that addressed next year. There's a lot of, this is just a deep draft next year. There's all those quarterbacks that are coming into play next season as well in the draft, and the Raiders will already have their quarterback. So they're going to be able to play the board and may be able to fall into place to land either a top offensive lineman, maybe find their left tackle of the future, maybe finally address right tackle for good if things don't quite work out for DJ Glaze there, or just get a guy that's too elite to pass up, or shore up that wide receiver spot. But I would imagine we're going to see it at some point next season, just a matter of when that actually is. Let's see. Major 0108 said, I don't see why we can't make the playoffs under Kubiak's scheme. AJ, MW, Hemby is a three-headed monster, and Max kept us... it jumped on me, damn it. Okay, and Max kept us in the most games last year, having all of our defensive additions under Robbie's scheme. We can have a top defense, good defense, plus a good run game wins. Look, I agree. I think the Raiders are going to be much better. Making the playoffs after a season like that is tough. We could see a very big flip for this team. I'm just trying to temper expectations because that, to me, is the thing where I'm just like, you got to wait and see what this team is. Like, I'm not able to really hit on that too much until we see it out on the field. This is a team that is much improved, that has injected a ton of talent into this roster, much more than I thought they were going to be able to, but I do not think that they're going to be able to make a playoff run this year. I think they're going to be threatening for the playoffs in 2027 beyond. Raider TR 273, thank you for jumping in. I appreciate you. I understand if you got a dip, but thank you. And we're going to be closing this one out soon as well because it's Cinco de Mayo, dude. My girlfriend, she wants to go out and get some tacos and a couple margaritas as well, so I can't stay on too long. We can't tip it past an hour, so I'm going to have to dip out in a sec too, but I want to hit a couple more questions here before we take off here. Let's see. Q Kurik V 2755. Sorry, dude. I totally probably butchered that one. You said, what did you see in Bech last summer? Honestly, we were wrong about a lot of the things that we saw in training camp. And I think a lot of that was Pete Carroll basically hijacking the offense and forcing something down Chip Kelly's throat that wasn't necessarily his offense. You know what I mean? So what we saw in Bech, we didn't see a ton from him. Last year during training camp, we saw Dant'e Thornton getting all the opportunities. Bech was predominantly working with the twos, but Bech, I did see him working inside and outside with a lot of the twos, but he didn't flash a ton. That was the thing where I was like, okay, maybe Bech just isn't going to be super involved, and he wasn't throughout the season. You know what I mean? So I'm so curious to see what we see out of him in minicamp and in training camp this year and all that different stuff, like what the usage looks like, because the fact that we didn't see him a ton showed during the season because they waited so long to really get him out there. And then again, I think it was, what did I say? 193. I want to make sure I get this one right. Yeah, 193 routes run last season for him. So it just wasn't good, in terms of the usage and stuff like that. So that should have been, shown, okay, yeah, that's how it's going to be. And I talked about it as well. It's Eric Queric. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate you clearing that up for me. I'll try not to screw that up. But yeah, so I'm interested to see what Bech looks like. Like I said, I think he benefits most from this staff coming in. I think we'll see more out of him, more usage from him. Let's see. Warlock67 said, early prediction for the wide receiver room to make the 53. Okay, yeah. So honestly, I think it's going to be Trey Tucker, Jalen Nailor, Jack Bech, Dant'e Thornton Jr., and Malik Benson. I do think Malik Benson makes this roster. That right there is 5. I don't know if they keep more than 5. I think they will, though. Otherwise, I don't think they would have signed Derek Young. So I think there's going to be 6. That last battle is going to be so interesting. To me, it comes down to Derek Young, who, again, has the experience with Klint Kubiak. So how much does that factor in? And he is a special teams guy. They know what they're getting in him. But Chase Roberts is a guy to watch out for. EJ Williams is a guy to watch out for as well. We can't forget about some of the other dudes, too. I'm going to pull up their depth chart here just so I make sure their depth chart so I don't forget some of the other guys. But there's Shedrick Jackson, who saw time last year as well. Brendan Rice, who got brought into the fold late. Who else am I missing here? Philip Dorsett, who's an older guy, but can still contribute on special teams, and he has Brady's ear as well. They've got a connection there too. So there's so many guys in the mix, and I know this is boring, but I'm just going to say that Derek Young ends up making this roster, so I think it's going to be chalk kind of the guys that I have in the thumbnail of this video. That's who I think ends up making this roster. I think they keep those 6, and those last couple spots obviously going to be key for special teams. That's what I think is going to be interesting. Let's see. All right, I'll close on this, even though it's not Raiders or receiver related. Itk.Raiders, and I know I butchered your thing so many times, so I apologize here. Itk Raiders N Raiders Nation, I think is what you're going for in that one. And we talked about this before, and I just always butcher these things, so I apologize. You said think Lobby is gone. Derek and Benson are the kick returners. Yeah, look, I do think that Lobby is going to end up being gone. Dylan Lobby, that is. Speaking of butchering last names, he's a guy like, man, you really like what you get out of him in special teams and stuff, and has the receiving ability, but I think Hemby makes this team, and I think he ends up being their RB3, to be completely honest. So I think that's how it kind of ends up working out with them. All right, last one here. I know I lied. Oaktown OG69. This is Raiders related, and I think this is a fun way to close it out here, okay? You say, who is your favorite current Raiders wide receiver to interview / hang in the locker room with? Honestly, it's Trey Tucker. Super cool dude. He just always takes the time to chop it up with all of us. Even if you're not talking ball, like he'll go back and forth with you on stuff. Like, just a good cat. And he like thoughtfully answers each and every one of your questions. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. Like just a good dude. He's super chill. So I really like interviewing Trey Tucker. Also, too, as just like another guy who, like, he was on the practice squad last year, Philip Dorsett as well. Another awesome dude. We talk boxing with him every now and then. Sean from over at Vegas Sports Today, he talks a ton, with Philip Dorsett about the boxing and all that different stuff and their backgrounds and that. I also box. I box and do jiu-jitsu, so like I like talking boxing and just the fight game in general with any of those guys that I know have an interest in it. And Philip Dorsett is really tapped in the boxing world. He's a big boxing fan. Obviously, Max Crosby's another dude that we joke around with all that stuff with as well. But yeah, so I would say it's Trey Tucker and then Philip Dorsett. Those are my 2 favorite guys to chop it up with in the locker room. I have the most fun with them. And we'll close with this one because this is an awesome shout out from my homie Itk. That's where I'm going to stop so I don't butcher your name again. You said, by the way, you sound like a genius on Morning Tailgate. I appreciate that. It's always nice to sound smart. Thank you for noting that. Make sure you guys are listening, if you're not already listening, to the Morning Tailgate consistently there on Raider Nation Radio with Vinny, Vince, and Clay. I actually will be joining them on a more regular basis now every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. So that is something that I love doing. I love chopping it up with those guys. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Agent Red 8016 said, I appreciate you, Jesse. You're out. I'm going to be out in a second too. And Not a Bot 9C9Q said, want to fight? You don't want the smoke, bro. That's where we're going to end it. Love you guys. Thank you for joining. Again, thank you so much for getting us over 10K as well. We'll see you again on Thursday with our full deep dive on Brock Bowers, this tight end room, what the roles will be for those guys, and specifically how Brock can get a lot of those JSN looks and what they're going to look like for him. That's going to be a lot of fun with Max Toscano, so make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. That's going to be dropping on Thursday at 10 a.m. In the meantime, though, have a great Cinco de Mayo. Hope you guys enjoy the night, and we'll catch you